Hi, my name is Eric Kimberly. I'm the CEO and founder of Third Stage Consulting Group. We're an independent enterprise software and digital transformation firm. Wanted to chat today about SAP's S/4HANA Activate methodology, along with some of the missing pieces of what you need to augment that methodology. And just to give some backdrop, if you're about to implement S/4HANA, Activate is the newest iteration of SAP's implementation methodology. They used to have the ASAP methodology that had traditionally been used for ECC and other legacy SAP deployments. And with the release of S/4HANA, they're now using the Activate methodology. And what we see oftentimes happen with a lot of companies is they think that the Activate methodology is an end-all be-all approach to implementing SAP. And so what we want to do today is talk about some of the blind spots, missing components of that methodology. Before we get started, my name is Eric Kimberling. As I mentioned, I'm the CEO and founder of Third Stage Consulting. I've been in the ERP and SAP space now for about 20 years. I started my career at one of the big system integrators as an SAP consultant, primarily focused on organizational change, but over the years, expanded my skill set within the SAP ecosystem to include project management, process reengineering. I started to do things outside of SAP as well with software selection and digital strategy, and have worked with a number of different other types of technologies over the years as well. And being technology agnostic, we have a lot of good lessons learned from SAP deployments over the years, as well as S/4HANA deployments in more recent years. And the problem that we often see with clients is once the technology has been selected and we've decided we're moving forward with S/4HANA, maybe we've got part of the company that's already using S/4HANA, perhaps we've decided to consolidate all the entities onto one instance or one platform. Whatever the case may be, we've decided we're moving forward with S/4HANA. A lot of the challenges that we see, though, is that companies don't know what to do next. They assume that the right thing to do is just to adopt the S/4HANA Activate methodology, bring in the system integrator who's going to adopt that for them, and start implementing stuff. And what ends up happening is you end up rushing into the implementation without a clear vision or plan. You end up delegating too much of the responsibility to your system integrator, and you end up setting unrealistic expectations for the deployment. So what we want to talk about today is what are the things we need to do and be aware of as we head into the S/4HANA deployment, particularly as it relates to the Activate methodology and things that we need to do to augment that. So this is a phenomenon that we often refer to as cliff diving. When companies select SAP, they decide it's time just to go and start doing stuff. They don't have a clear vision. They don't have a clear direction. System integrator takes control of the project. The meter starts running on the consultants while you're trying to figure out what you want to be when you grow up. The technology ends up driving the business rather than the business driving the technology. And you end up spending too much time and money on the project, causes a lot of frustration. It's a lot to absorb, and it dismisses or defers a lot of the ownership of the project to your system integrator. So there's a lot of different risks that come along with this phenomenon known as cliff diving from the time we select the software and just jumping straight into implementation. What we'll suggest here is what are the things that we need to do in addition to that Activate methodology that your tendencies, your instincts might be telling you just to jump straight in. But here we're going to talk about what are those things that we need to augment that Activate methodology that your system integrator or your implementer might be bringing to the table. So to set some further context, when we look at what causes an S/4HANA transformation to be complex, there's a number of different layers, things that contribute to the complexity, the time, the cost, the effort that it's going to take to make your S/4HANA project successful. And the three things that have the biggest impact on that are process change, the degree of process change that your organization will experience as a result of the S/4HANA transformation, the amount of people change, so how much people's jobs will change and how open to change they are or not. That whole where you fall on the spectrum is going to determine how much time and effort it's going to take. And then how big of a technology shift this is for you. If you're going from an AS400 legacy green screen system over to S/4HANA, that's a pretty big jump. If you're using a Y2K or post Y2K semi-modern ERP system, maybe a tier 2 system, but now you want to jump over to SAP, that's a little less complex. And certainly if you're using ECC or R3 or one of the legacy SAP products, that's less of a jump, still a jump, but not as much of a jump as some of the other scenarios. So really just understanding where you are on the journey, how big of a jump it's going to be, what are the things that are going to contribute to the complexity of the transformation is a key step here. And one thing that the Activate methodology assumes is that we're all starting from the same place, but we're not. We're starting from very different places, and we've got to adjust that Activate methodology and augment that Activate methodology for who we are, where we're headed, what we've been through, what we're trying to accomplish with this project. There's a lot of customization, even though that's a bad word in this industry, customization of the methodology, not the software, but customization of the methodology that we need to do to make this relevant to us and make our S/4HANA project more successful. So we have to think about, are we ready for the Activate methodology? There's a lot of things we should be doing before we even start unpacking this Activate methodology. And on the right side of the screen, you see the general structure, the general framework for the SAP's Activate methodology. And this is the similar approach that a lot of the system integrators will follow. This is SAP's prescribed approach to deploying S/4HANA. Some really good stuff in here, some definite improvements over ASAP and some of the other older methodologies that SAP and others had used to deploy the old products, but there's still a lot missing. It's still very centric on technology. It's helping us figure out how to configure and build and test and move the data into S/4HANA, but it's not giving us a clear roadmap for how to transform our entire organization. And that piece, that last part, is arguably the most important part, and that's the stuff we need to start on and get a clear direction on before we start moving over to the Activate methodology. So on the left side of the screen, you see some key things that are missing from an implementation readiness perspective. Some of the things that should be done before you start deploying the Activate methodology, before you start designing, building, testing the software. We need to figure out where we're going to be when we grow up. We need to figure out what our business blueprint is, what this overall transformation means to us, what it needs to look like, and then we figure out how now Activate will help enable that. So the left side of the screen includes some things that are missing from Activate, things around organizational design, defining what people's roles and responsibilities are. How are we going to standardize those business processes? Activate methodology assumes we've figured some of that out and we've defined our general processes. Now we just need to translate that into S/4HANA. Well, most companies haven't figured that out yet. They're trying to figure that out on the meter while the meter's running with the system integrator and the consultants, and they end up rushing into a decision, or they end up taking their time making the right decision, but they end up spending way too much time and money on the implementation because they were letting the meter run while they're making those decisions. So the more of that upfront work we can do, the more time and money we'll save as we get into Activate. The change impact analysis is a very important organizational change component. We want to figure out how we want to build skills and competencies, those non-technical skills and competencies to support the S/4HANA transformation. And then also how we want to build the S/4HANA competencies itself so that we're not overly dependent on our system integrator or outside consultants. We actually have people internally that can start to stand toe-to-toe with the system integrator and be a true partner rather than having to defer to the partner, defer to the system integrator to a fault because they just don't know any better. They don't know the technology. So the more we can do to get a leg up on the stuff, the better that implementation is going to go, and the more effectively we're going to be able to leverage that Activate methodology when we get to that point in the journey. But the key is, when do we get to that point in the journey? Like I said, you don't want to jump straight into Activate. You want to make sure you're ready. You've got a clear blueprint and roadmap, then start to deploy the Activate methodology along with your system integrator consultants, your technical and functional consultants. So this is a roadmap for the implementation readiness that we typically advise our clients through. We have probably 6 or 7 clients right now as I'm recording this video that we're helping them through their implementation readiness for their S/4HANA transformation. So these are the 5 major buckets or work streams, a lot of detail behind this that I won't get into. We have other videos on my YouTube channel that you can check out that unpacks this one slide and breaks it up into multiple slides and more detail and templates and stuff like that. But this will at least give you a vision or a high-level sense of what should be included. So first is your strategic and executive alignment. That's a very important part of making sure we've got that figured out, because Activate's not going to help us figure that out. Activate will not solve that problem for us. So we've got to make sure we've got strategic and executive alignment and direction for this project so that we can better use that Activate methodology. The operational readiness, that's more, consider that the business blueprint, not the SAP S/4HANA blueprint in using SAP's nomenclature, but more the business blueprint, that overarching map of who we are, much like a general contractor is going to have a blueprint for how to build a house before we start building in before we start bringing in the drywall people, the plumbers, the electricians, the roofers, all that stuff. We need to first have that blueprint, understand what it is we're trying to accomplish and what the general roadmap is. Then we start bringing in the system integrator, or the plumbers in this case, using that analogy, to figure out how S/4HANA and the Activate methodology can enable some of those business processes defined in that operational readiness work stream. Now we also have people readiness. So there's a people readiness component that's, think of that as organizational change management, not training and communications, but the organizational design, the more strategic organizational change components that Activate methodology does not address, but yet it's critical to your overall transformation. You do that part right, Activate methodology becomes that much more effective. So we start to figure out what is our organizational change team? What's the org design? What's our communication plan? How are we going to start to implement some of those organizational design changes even before we start building and deploying the software? And then there's the technical readiness, making sure we've got a clear vision and roadmap for what the architecture is going to be, how we're going to move data over, how we can start to build that internal center of excellence or internal competency around S/4HANA so that our IT staff can be on equal footing or at least an equal partner with our system integrator and provide some of that functional and technical knowledge in-house rather than outsourcing the entire thing. And it makes knowledge transfer that much easier later on if we can do that up front. And then finally, the project governance and planning. That's one thing that I don't believe, in my experience, that the Activate methodology nor the system integrators in the SAP ecosystem are generally very good at. Some are, but most are not. And so we need to figure out what is our overall project governance? How are we going to identify and mitigate risks? And what's our overall transformation plan, our overall roadmap? What is in and out of scope for SAP, for S/4HANA? Where are we going to plug in third-party systems? All that stuff we need to have a clear vision and governance around. So when we're working with our clients, generally we end up acting as an extension of our client's PMO. We end up providing the project management capabilities, the risk management mitigation arm of the project. And we also end up being the ones that'll help plug some of these gaps that we're talking about. Plug the gaps that your system integrators don't provide, that the Activate methodology doesn't provide. And those are typically things that we just talked about on the previous slide, things around organizational change at a strategic level, process reengineering, the overall program management, risk management, that sort of stuff. So you'll notice though that you see us off on the bottom left, you'll see your system integrator off on the bottom right. Notice who's at the top. It's you. It's the implementing organization that ultimately owns this. And it's important that you end up squarely in the driver's seat of this project. And we're always there to help our clients do that. We want to enable them to be empowered to drive the project the way that they feel is best and leverage outside experience in a very targeted and deliberate way rather than doing the traditional, let's just outsource this to system integrator X and spend X amount of money and let them handle it. That is a recipe for a disaster. So let's figure out a way to own this so we can control this project, take accountability, and ultimately have some sustainability for this longer term for ourselves. And this is a high-level project QA framework we use with our clients throughout an S/4HANA transformation, beginning in that early stage of implementation readiness and certainly throughout the Activate methodology as well. We're applying these different lenses that we analyze and assess a project and identify risk and mitigate risk in ways that the Activate methodology typically does not address. So I won't go into this in detail. Again, there's another video out on my YouTube channel that covers just this framework and dives into this framework in more detail. If you just search my YouTube channel for SAP QA, you should be able to find it there. But this hopefully gives you a high-level sense of what is some of that QA, quality assurance type of stuff that I need to do to ensure that the project is successful. So I hope this is helpful. I hope this gives you a sense of where to use Activate methodology and just as importantly, where to augment what the Activate methodology does not provide, because that is arguably just as important as the methodology itself. It's figuring out what doesn't include and what do we need to do to make sure we've addressed that. So if you have questions, you'd like to chat more about this, bounce around ideas, you've got specific issues you're dealing with on your project, feel free to reach out. Send me an email. Feel free to call me, connect with me on LinkedIn, and let's talk about your project. Be happy to informally bounce around ideas, be a sounding board for you, and help as you continue your journey. So I hope you have a great day. Hope you found this video helpful, and we'll talk soon. Thanks.